This footage captures 23-year-old university student Molly McLaren and her ex-boyfriend, 26-year-old Joshua Stimpson, working out at their local gym. It had been just 2 weeks since the couple had split up, and Joshua still had strong feelings for Molly. Such strong feelings, in fact, that he had spent days planning exactly how he was going to deal with her. And by the morning of June 29, 2017, he was certain of one thing: Molly was not going to leave their relationship alive. Before we start, we would like to send our sincere condolences to the loved ones of Molly McLaren. Molly McLaren was born on June 26, 1994, in the picturesque town of Cobham in Kent, South England. Her parents, Joanne and Douglas McLaren, described her as a kind-hearted, bubbly, and beautiful person inside and out. Growing up, Molly had struggled with bulimia and anxiety. In recent years, she had worked to overcome her issues and had become passionate about promoting self-love, acceptance, and positivity. And by 2015, she was ready for a fresh start. Molly began studying for a degree in exercise, sport, and health education at the University of Kent. She embraced her student life. She joined societies and sports clubs and had regular nights out with her new friends that she had made in her course of study. And she had started a new fitness blog where she shared motivational quotes and videos of her workouts. By the summer of 2016, Molly felt ready to meet someone. She downloaded the popular dating app Tinder, and it was on Tinder that Molly would swipe right on 26-year-old Joshua Stimpson. Stimpson had grown up in Stoke-on-Trent before moving to Woodham near Rochester, just 7 miles from Molly. Joshua, like Molly, had battled mental health issues, with his first referral to a mental health specialist at just 12 years old. His parents had recently divorced at the time, and his father was given full custody of Joshua. This didn't sit well with him. He felt like his mother had abandoned him. As a teenager, Joshua would regularly be seen as an outpatient at the Kingsley House Mental Health Clinic in Kent. But he refused counseling for his depression, but was eventually prescribed antidepressants. By 2016, he was working a job in a warehouse and had a less-than-ideal past when it came to dating. His last relationship had ended with a confrontation in which he spat in his girlfriend's face. Molly and Joshua matched on July 31st, 2016. Soon they were chatting regularly. 24-year-old Joshua shared with Molly his own struggles with anxiety and depression. He told Molly he had suffered from bipolar disorder. Like Molly, he was also a fitness enthusiast. Molly felt a connection with Joshua, and so, in November of 2016, they finally met in person. Over the coming weeks, the two would spend more and more time together. Soon, Molly would tell her friends that she was falling for him. It was Molly's first proper relationship. But for Molly's friends and family, alarm bells were ringing. Her friends remember feeling on edge around him.
When I met him, he wasn't overly chatty.
He didn't seem to have any interest in getting to know them or any friends of his own. Molly's parents were concerned at how much time and energy he was demanding. He seemed to have no respect for boundaries. If Molly told him she couldn't meet him that day, he would just turn up at the house anyway. He wanted her full attention. After one weekend where she studied while he'd hung around the house, he messaged her, "It's unfair me wasting hours of my weekend sat on your bed in silence." Molly was beginning to feel suffocated. She wrote to Joshua that she needed some space. "We can't be with each other 24/7. I feel really pressured." Joshua fired back with insults and abuse. She was taking him for granted, throwing his kindness back in his face. Molly apologized, but her friends were shocked. It was clear that Joshua was manipulating Molly. His manipulation was already more ingrained than anyone knew. Joshua had never been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. He had concocted the diagnosis as a way of getting sympathy and attention from Molly. and it was a tool he would use again and again. Often, when Molly made plans with friends, Joshua would suddenly have an episode of depression that required Molly to cancel. Everywhere Molly went, Joshua insisted on going too. Soon, he quit his job just so he could spend more time with her. He used her issues as a reason for him to be around as well. She needed his support. Soon, Molly was telling friends that she just couldn't take it anymore. He was too demanding, too possessive, and they were arguing constantly. After several days in a row of Joshua showing up unannounced at her house, Molly told Joshua it was over. But she didn't know Joshua or his dating history. It wasn't going to be as easy as she imagined. Joshua flipped. He began messaging her incessantly, begging for another chance. "Please do not break up with me. I will literally beg. One chance is all I'm asking for. I will do anything." He implied that she was seeing things all wrong, taking things the wrong way. He told her it was anxiety that was the issue. She wasn't happy with herself. He encouraged her to book a GP appointment to seek help. After successfully gaslighting her into believing that their relationship issues were all in her head, and yet more badgering and pleading, Molly took him back. For a time, things seemed to improve. Joshua was working again, this time as an operations assistant at a window company. His co-workers said that he seemed to have two sides to him, one that was bright and likable, the other dark, irrational, and withdrawn. And soon, the same old patterns with Molly were repeating themselves. In April of 2017, the pair attended a party together for Molly's aunt's 60th birthday in Essex. Throughout the night, the McLaren family watched as Joshua stared daggers at Molly anytime she danced, even with her own cousins. Molly's mother, Joanne, was already in bed when she received a message from Molly asking her to come to their hotel room. Joshua was in a rage. When Joanne arrived in the room, she found a furious Joshua urging her to take a look at the videos he had taken of Molly during recent arguments. He'd been recording and videoing her without her knowledge, just so he would have something he could use against her if he needed it. Joanne remembers thinking for the first time that there really was something off about Joshua. She wasn't the only one. Molly was ready to break up with him, but she told her family she wanted to give him one last chance. They had a holiday planned in Tenerife, and against her parents' advice, Molly wanted to go. Maybe on a holiday, they could work out their issues. Within one day of their vacation, she was messaging home that she had made a mistake. Thought this thing with Josh was going to pass, but it's not. It's the worst thing ever. Help me. Upon her return from the trip, Molly told her mother that she no longer had feelings for Joshua. She just needed to find the right time and words to end it with him amicably. That time would end up being June 17th, 2017. Molly had made plans to have a night out with friends in Maidstone at a late celebration of her 23rd birthday. For days, she and Joshua had been arguing over Messenger, but they were still a couple and decided to put their differences aside for that night. It didn't take long before Joshua was in one of his moods. This time, though, Molly snapped. In the middle of the club, she told Joshua it was over, and Joshua lost it. He turned and shouted to her friends, "She's finished with me." Her friends remember the look on his face, the pure rage. It was the first time they had seen this side of Joshua, but it would not be the last. No one had expected Joshua to take the breakup well, but they hadn't anticipated what would come next. For Molly and her family, the real nightmare was only just beginning. When his pleading for her to take him back failed, he became aggressive. Molly blocked him. Joshua then took to social media and began posting messages designed to humiliate her. He wrote that Molly, the fit, sporty, exercise enthusiast and health student, was a drug abuser. He posted private messages she had sent him and screenshots of their conversation, tagging the family members to make sure they would see them. "You are a cokehead." Have you been honest that you need to stop sniffing gear? Gear being a euphemism for drugs. Even lying to your own mom. With Joshua blocked from her own account, Molly had only learned of the messages when a cousin phoned to let her know. Molly was horrified. She had known Joshua could be vindictive, but she never thought he was capable of this. On June 22nd, they printed everything out, from the texts to the social media posts, and walked down to the North Kent police station. Police officer Philpott attended to Molly's case. With Molly and her mother in the room, Philpott phoned Joshua and put him on the loudspeaker. He warned him to stop or face prosecution and ordered him to remove the abusive posts. Molly's mother remembers him saying repeatedly, "I haven't done anything wrong." And then finally, "If you think I have, there's more to come." Philpott told Joshua, "We wouldn't want Molly to come to the station again about you, would we?" Joshua's response was chilling. He simply said, "Wouldn't we?" The police report that followed stated that while Molly was upset by Joshua's actions, what Joshua had done did not constitute a course of harassment and did not constitute a criminal offense. The next day, June 23rd, Joshua turned up at the police station himself. He had his own complaints to file. He told them that Molly was spreading rumors that he was in trouble with the police and it was damaging his reputation and career. Police advised Joshua to cease any contact with Molly and once again to remove the offending posts. Just 2 days later, Molly contacted the police again. Joshua had posted another message. Once again, the incident was logged and the information was passed on to Officer Philpott. But Philpott wouldn't be on duty again for the next few days. He wouldn't be able to deal with this until his return. By now, Molly was feeling genuinely fearful of Joshua. Her family circulated photos of him to their neighbors and asked if they saw him near the house to let them know. On June 27th, Molly received what was to be her final call from police. Ostensibly, it was good news. Joshua had removed the offensive posts. He explained that he didn't want potential customers seeing them. In fact, simply, he had a new strategy plan. What no one knew was that just 1 week earlier, Joshua had stopped by a couple of local hardware stores. In one, he had purchased a knife. In another, a pickaxe. And both were now stashed away in his car. He also found a way around Molly blocking him from her accounts. A woman Joshua had stayed in touch with after a single Tinder date agreed to befriend Molly across all her social media accounts and feed back the information to Joshua about her posts. Joshua had misled her on his reasons for following Molly, but now he was able to know Molly's every move. Late that afternoon, Joshua firmed up his plans that he had made with another Tinder date to meet that night. He had a special place in mind for them to grab a drink. It was a warm summer evening on June 28, 2017, and the sun still hours from setting when Molly took a smiling selfie and posted it to Snapchat. She had already changed all the names on her social media accounts and set up new ones. She added the words to the photo, "Ship and trade this eve," with a love heart. It had been a couple of rough months for Molly, and she was ready to unwind with friends at the Ship and Trades pub at the Chatham Docks. They hadn't been there long when Molly went to the bar to order some food. When she came back, her friend said that she looked like she had seen a ghost. In fact, she had seen Joshua sitting with his Tinder date. Later, he walked past her table, making sure to catch her eye on the way. Molly figured it had to be an unlucky coincidence, but she did feel shaken. She told her friends not to worry about him, that he was just some psycho. But she finished her drink and left early. It was the last time they would see her alive. By 10:10 a.m. the next morning, Molly was already at her gym at the Chatham Dockside Outlet. She had been visiting the gym daily to film workouts that she was doing as part of a new personal training course she was enrolled in. There was nobody in the workout room as she pulled out her mat and began her exercises. Minutes later, Joshua arrived. He takes the stairs 2 at a time to the open door, spies Molly, and does a U-turn back down the stairs. Then he turns right around again and confidently enters the room. Molly is in mid-workout when she looks over and notices the all-too-familiar figure enter. Joshua picks up an exercise mat and starts to stretch right next to where Molly is working out. Molly captures him in her video before going over to confront him. She asks him if he had been following her and why he was not at work. He tells her it's none of her business, so she leaves the room for another part of the gym where she sends several frantic texts. At 10:45 a.m., Molly texted her mother, Joanne, "Mom, he's turned up at the gym, and come next to me." She then called her mom, who told her to come straight home and drive carefully. Molly then texted a friend, Amy Lee. It was 10:59 a.m. She sent a photo of Joshua in the workout room next to her. Like Joanne, Amy told Molly to go straight back home. At 11 a.m., Molly wrote a reply. She thought that Joshua had left the gym and she was going home. She packed up her equipment and started walking to her car. Joshua had left the gym, but he hadn't left the car park. Joshua had been driving slowly around the car lot waiting for Molly to leave. At 11:02 a.m., Amy wrote, "He has no sense of what's normal. He is a freak. Just stay away from him." Now inside her car, Molly didn't notice Joshua walking towards her car across the car park carrying a knife. At 11:08 a.m., Molly looked up to see Joshua jerking open the driver's side door of her black Citroen. Before she could put her hands up to defend herself, he started stabbing. Joshua was a man possessed. He mercilessly stabbed Molly again and again, and he didn't stop until he was sure that Molly was dead. When he was finished, he calmly stepped away, his white tank top splattered in blood, and waited by the car for police. When they approached, he wiped the blood from his face and said matter-of-factly, "It's me you're looking for. She's in the car. I've killed her." Despite the best efforts of the paramedics to save her life, 23-year-old Molly McLaren was declared dead at the scene at 11:43 a.m. She had more than 75 stab wounds. Neither Joanne or Amy had heard a word from Molly since she told them that she was going home. Amy then received a message from a friend about an attack at Dockside. Amy remembers thinking it couldn't possibly be Molly. She'd already left. Then a friend that she was with checked Molly's location on Snapchat. It showed her still at Dockside. She'd never made it home. Normally, it took Molly 15 minutes to drive home. As the minutes ticked by, Molly's mother Joanne wondered if she had gotten stuck in traffic. She dropped Molly a message, but heard nothing back. Then came a message from one of Molly's friends asking if she had seen that something was happening at the Chatham Dockside. Joanne felt herself go cold. She knew instantly something had happened to Molly. Soon, officers were at the house, confirming her worst fears. The victim in the parking lot was indeed her daughter Molly. Joanne had to pass on the heartbreaking news to her husband, who was on a boat about 100 miles off the coast of Senegal for work, that his beloved daughter had been murdered. The trial began in January of 2018 and would focus primarily on whether or not Joshua Stimpson was in control of his faculties when he killed Molly McLaren. Joshua Stimpson had pleaded not guilty of murder on the grounds of diminished responsibility owing to a personality disorder. According to UK law, a personality disorder is grounds for diminished responsibility. That diagnosis would ultimately come down to the opinion of two psychiatrists. Psychiatrist Dr. Saheed Majid, the lead forensic consultant at Thornford Park Psychiatric Hospital where Joshua was assessed after Molly's death, was called upon by the defense. Dr. Majid had diagnosed Joshua as suffering from a severe case of borderline personality disorder. At the time of the murder, Dr. Majid said that Joshua was suffering from an abnormality of functioning owing to his mental illness and the abandonment issues that had stemmed from his parents' divorce. Joshua, he said, had a hypersensitivity to any rejection. Arguing on behalf of the prosecution was psychiatrist Dr. Philip Joseph. He disagreed with Majid. Joshua gave no signs of having a mental disorder that impeded his understanding enough to not hold him responsible for his actions. Rather, he was immature, vain, had narcissistic traits, and showed no remorse over killing Molly McLaren, he said. It took a jury less than 4 hours to come back with a verdict. Joshua Stimpson was guilty of murder. At his sentencing hearing, Judge Adele Williams said Joshua didn't have a personality disorder, but just an issue with women. You see, during the trial, the family had learned that he had done this before, stalking and terrorizing. 2 women came forward to recount their own chilling experiences with Joshua. Leah Hubbard had met Joshua on a night out at the Source Bar in Maidstone in 2016. The pair had hit it off and met up several times in the days that followed. One night, Leah told Joshua that she was going to a bachelorette party on an upcoming Friday evening. Joshua asked if Leah would be talking to any boys while she was out. The question struck her as odd. They had only just met, and they were not even exclusive, and Joshua was already acting possessive. A few days later, Leah was visiting her grandmother for her birthday when her phone began blowing up with calls and texts from Joshua accusing her of lying about where she was. With red flags everywhere, Leah ended things with him that same day, only to awaken a few nights later at 2 a.m. to find Joshua in her house. He told her he'd been out on the town and just needed to charge his phone. The next day, she messaged Joshua to tell him that if he ever did that again, she would call the police. Joshua never came over again. Instead, Leah began noticing him wherever she went, and he was watching her. Things came to a head when he spat a drink in her face at a bar and was forcibly removed from the venue. Joshua, it seemed, had finally decided to move on, but weeks later, he had moved on to Molly McLaren. And this was not the only disturbing story that would come to light during Joshua's trial. In 2013, Alexandra Dale went on one date with Joshua after meeting him on Tinder. After their date, she politely told him that she just didn't feel a connection. She figured that would be that, but she didn't know Joshua. She was shocked when Joshua then bombarded her phone with calls and messages threatening her, telling her that he would fly out to where she was and drown her. He later sent a picture of her back garden, despite having never told him where she lived, and slashed the tires on her car after telling her, "There's a surprise waiting for you when you get home." When Alexandra returned from her holiday, Joshua began showing up on her nights out. He openly followed her around, taking pictures, then sending them to her and branding her a slag for what she was wearing. Alexandra reported the stalking and harassment to Staffordshire police 3 times throughout 2013, stating that she was fearing for her safety, but his behavior was not recorded as a crime. The investigating officer simply texted Joshua telling him to stop contacting her. Had it been logged properly, Kent police would have seen the 2013 incident report when Molly reported her own experience of harassment, and maybe more would have been done to protect her. What motivated Joshua? The motivation is quite simply revenge. They are often controlling personalities with antisocial and narcissistic tendencies who simply cannot abide being rejected. After following Joshua's case closely, Alexandra felt that she had had a lucky escape. She wrote on Facebook, "This twisted made my life hell, and the police were informed yet did nothing about it. This poor girl did the same, and still nothing. I can't even imagine what her family are going through." Judge Adele Williams told Joshua that he should never be released for the sheer wickedness of his crimes. "You were determined to punish her for finishing with you. You were seeking revenge. She was 23 years old, beautiful and intelligent. Her family's grief and anguish is raw and apparent for everyone to see. You are a highly dangerous young man, and you will pose a very considerable risk to women for a very considerable period of time in the future. He was sentenced to 26 years imprisonment. Molly McLaren's family released a statement following the sentencing.
The verdict has brought us a small measure of comfort, but it seems that nothing will take away the pain or allow us to come to terms with our Molly being taken from us. We are serving a lifetime of pain, anguish and loss.
Kent police later invited the Independent Office for Police Conduct to conduct an inquiry into their handling of the case and the series of failings involved. Officers are now required to record stalking as a crime. Today, Molly's legacy lives on through the work of the foundation that her family has set up in her honor. The Molly McLaren Foundation helps to fund charities that educate, raise awareness, and provide support for people who, like Molly, are affected by eating disorders. While Joshua Stimpson sits in a prison cell, we will leave you with some final words which are written by Molly before her tragic and untimely death.